James had been working on the mining colony of Kepler 442b for 3 long years. Every day was the same. He would wake up, put on his suit, go out to the mining sites and dig for rare minerals. Then he would come back, eat his meal and sleep. The colony was not a place for dreams or hopes. It was a place where people came to survive and earn money. Nothing more. The colony had about 200 workers, but James felt alone most of the time. He did not talk much to the other people. He preferred to work by himself, thinking about his life back on Earth. He had left Earth to escape his past, and now he was stuck on this frozen, empty planet with nothing but rocks and ice. On the day everything changed, James was working near the eastern mining site when alarms started to sound. The emergency signal blared across the entire colony. Something was very wrong. He heard through his communication device that the main power generator had failed completely. The backup systems were not working either. The colony's life support would fail in a matter of weeks, maybe less. James rushed back to the main station with the other workers. The commander stood in the center of the control room, looking at screens filled with red warning lights. "The generator is beyond repair," the commander said quietly. "Rescue won't arrive for at least 18 months. We have enough oxygen and food for about 3 weeks if we ration everything carefully." 3 weeks. James felt the words hit him like a physical blow. 3 weeks to live. He had survived so many difficult things in his life, but this felt different. This felt like the end. The colony fell into chaos. Some people tried to fix the generator, though it was clearly hopeless. Others sat quietly, accepting their fate. A few people became angry and violent. James decided to do something different. He decided to leave the colony and try to find something, anything that might help them survive longer. He packed a bag with basic supplies and took one of the old exploration vehicles. It was not very reliable, but it was the only thing available. He drove out into the frozen wastes of Kepler 442b, heading toward the northern region where no one had explored much before. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in a terrible way. Mountains of ice rose up like giant teeth against the dark sky. The temperature was so cold that even with his suit's heating system, James could feel the chill trying to get inside him. He drove for hours, seeing nothing but empty white and gray. Then he saw it. Something large and dark on the horizon. Something that did not belong to the colony. As he got closer, his heart began to beat faster. It was a ship. Not a human ship. A massive alien vessel that had crashed into the ice and snow. James had never seen an alien ship before. He approached it carefully, his hand on the emergency beacon in case he needed to call for help. The ship was huge, with strange symbols carved or painted on its side. He could see that it had crashed hard. There were deep cracks in the metal and parts of the hull were torn away. He entered through a broken section of the ship. Inside, everything was dark and cold, even colder than outside. His light cut through the darkness, showing him twisted metal and broken equipment. Then he heard something. A sound. A voice. Someone was crying. James moved toward the sound. In a small chamber near what must have been the cockpit, he found her. An alien girl, maybe 17 or 18 years old by human standards, though he had no idea how to judge alien age. She had pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly in the darkness. Her eyes were large and round, filled with tears. Her body was injured. One of her arms hung at a wrong angle, and there was dark blood on her clothes. When she saw James, she made a sound of fear. She tried to move away from him, but she was too hurt. She fell back down, and more tears came from her eyes. "I will not hurt you," James said slowly and carefully, raising his hands to show he had no weapons. "I am not your enemy. I am hurt too. I need help. You need help. Maybe we can help each other." The alien girl did not understand his words, but something in his voice seemed to calm her. She stopped trying to move away. James slowly approached her and looked at her injuries. Her arm was definitely broken. She had a cut on her side and several bruises. But she was alive, and with careful treatment she could survive. James found a relatively clean area near the ship's medical bay. He spent the next hour carefully setting her broken arm using strips of cloth and a piece of metal as a splint. She cried out in pain several times, but she did not resist. She seemed to understand that he was trying to help her. When he was done, he realized something. His emergency rations were precious. He had been planning to eat them slowly over the next few weeks to stay alive as long as possible. He had 6 meal packets. If he ate them all himself, he might survive long enough for rescue. But looking at this injured alien girl, he knew what he had to do. He opened one of his meal packets. It contained preserved vegetables, a protein bar, and a water purifier tablet. He prepared the water and mixed the food into a basic soup. Then he gave it to the alien girl. She looked at the food with suspicion at first. Then she ate it slowly and something changed in her eyes. The fear was still there, but something else appeared too. Something like hope. Like gratitude. Like the feeling of being cared for by another living being in a lonely universe. The night was long and cold. James and the alien girl sat together in the darkness of the crashed ship. She tried to communicate with him using sounds and gestures. He learned that her name was Arya, though the way she said it made strange musical sounds. She told him, through her limited gestures, that she was far from home. That she was lost. That she had been alone and afraid. For the first time in many years, James felt like he was not completely alone either. The morning light was pale and weak when James heard the sound of engines in the distance. He woke up suddenly, his hand reaching for the emergency beacon he kept close. Arya was still asleep, her breathing steady and calm for the first time since he had found her. She looked peaceful, almost human in her sleep, though her blue skin and unusual features reminded him that she was from another world entirely. The sound grew louder. Ships were coming. James knew immediately that they were not human vessels. The engine sounds were different, more like a deep humming that seemed to vibrate through the very ice beneath them. He stepped outside the crashed ship and looked up at the sky. 3 massive alien ships descended through the atmosphere. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their hulls were smooth and dark, with lights running along their sides like veins of energy. They moved with perfect precision, landing around the crash site in a perfect triangle formation. Soldiers emerged from the largest ship. They wore armor that looked like it was made from liquid metal, constantly shifting and changing color. They carried weapons that James could not even begin to understand. There were at least 30 of them, moving in perfect formation toward the crashed vessel. James stepped forward slowly, raising his hands to show he was not a threat. He had no weapons. He was just a human in a mining suit, standing on an alien world. The soldiers stopped about 20 meters away from him. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure who seemed to be in charge. Through a communication device, a voice spoke in perfect English. "Who are you? Where is the princess?" James was confused. Princess? He did not know Arya was royalty. But he understood what was important. "She is alive," he said clearly. "She is inside the ship. She is hurt, but she will be okay. I helped her. I did not hurt her." The soldiers exchanged looks, and James could sense they were communicating with each other, though he could not hear them. Then the leader turned back to him. "Bring her out. Carefully." James went back into the ship and woke Arya gently. He explained with simple gestures that her people had come to rescue her. She looked worried at first, but then relief flooded her face. She tried to stand, but her injuries made it difficult. James helped her walk slowly to the entrance of the ship. When Arya appeared, the soldiers immediately relaxed slightly. They rushed forward and carefully took her from James. They examined her injuries with great speed and efficiency, speaking in their own language in urgent tones. A soldier with a medical device scanned her arm and her side, and the injuries seemed to hurt less. She closed her eyes in relief. One of the soldiers turned to James and pointed a weapon at him. "Human, you will come with us. The princess must be questioned. We must know what happened and why you were with her." James followed the soldiers to their ship. He was not under arrest exactly, but he was clearly a prisoner. They took him to a holding cell that was surprisingly clean and comfortable. They gave him water and food, though the food was strange and tasted like nothing he had ever eaten before. They seemed to be treating him well, which was confusing. Hours passed. James sat in the cell and thought about Arya. He wondered if she was okay. He wondered if she would tell them that he had helped her, or if she would say he had captured her. He had no way to know what would happen next. Then a door opened and a very different alien entered. This one wore elegant robes instead of armor. She was taller than Arya and older, with the same pale blue skin. She looked at James with intelligent eyes. "I am Counselor Vex," she said in English. "The princess has told us everything. She says you gave her your food when you were starving yourself. She says you treated her injuries with care. She says you saved her life." James was surprised. "I only did what any person would do," he said quietly. The counselor studied him carefully. "That is not true. Among our people, many would have left her to die or tried to harm her for value. The princess is very impressed with your actions. She has asked that you be released unharmed and returned to your colony. Will she be okay?" James asked. "Yes," Counselor Vex said. "Her injuries are not serious. She will recover fully. You have our gratitude, human." A few hours later, James was taken to a small transport vessel. They gave him supplies for his colony, medicine, and even some technology that might help repair their power generator. As he was about to leave, Arya appeared. She was walking without help now, and the color had returned to her face. "Thank you," she said simply, her English accented but clear. "I will not forget what you did for me." "Will you be okay?" James asked. "Yes," Arya replied. "I will be okay. And maybe one day our worlds will meet again." James left Kepler 442b 3 days later on a rescue ship. The technology the Valorians had given helped the colony repair their systems just enough to survive until a proper rescue arrived. None of the other colonists knew the real story of what had happened. James never told them about Arya or the crashed ship. But he never forgot her face, or the way she had cried, or the simple moment of sharing food with someone from another world. 10 years passed. James became a commander in Earth's defense force. He rose through the ranks because he was smart and brave and made good decisions. He earned respect from his soldiers and his superiors. He thought often about Arya, wondering where she was and what she was doing. He did not know that on the other side of the galaxy, Arya was also rising through her own society. She was becoming powerful and influential, and she was using her power to change her people's way of thinking. And she was doing it all because of a human who had shared his last meal with a crying alien girl on a frozen planet. The invasion began without warning. One moment, Earth's defense network was monitoring normal space traffic. The next moment, alarms screamed across every military station and civilian communication channel. Ships were coming. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. No one knew for certain because they kept appearing, wave after wave, like a tide that could not be stopped. James was in the command center when the first reports came in. He was a commander now, respected and experienced, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The ships were not human. They were massive, sleek, and covered with weapons that made humanity's best technology look like toys. The symbols on their hulls were the same symbols James had seen on the crashed ship 10 years ago. The Valorians. "Get me a visual," James ordered, his voice steady even though his heart was racing. The screens filled with images of the alien warships. They were beautiful and horrible at the same time. Some were as large as small cities. They moved through space with perfect coordination, splitting into attack formations as they approached human colonies and space stations. The first colony attacked was on Mars. The Valorian ships did not try to negotiate. They did not send warnings. They simply appeared above the planet and began firing. The defense station there tried to fight back, but they were completely outmatched. The station was destroyed in minutes. Thousands of people died. Then the Valorians moved to the next target. Within 48 hours, 5 human colonies had been destroyed or captured. Millions of people were dead. Governments fell into panic. Military leaders argued about strategy. Scientists tried to understand the alien ship's technology. Nothing seemed to matter. The Valorians kept coming. James was promoted to lead Earth's final defense line. It was not a promotion he wanted. It was a responsibility that felt impossible. He had a fleet of 300 ships. The Valorian fleet, as far as they could tell, had at least 900 ships. The Valorians also had superior weapons, better shields, and they seemed to know exactly where Earth's defenses were positioned. It was as if the Valorians were reading humanity's playbook. "They're targeting our communication satellites first," reported Lieutenant Sarah, one of James's officers. "They're cutting us off from outer colonies. Then they're attacking the supply stations. They're not trying to conquer. They're trying to starve us out and eliminate our ability to fight back." James realized she was right. This was not a random invasion. This was a calculated, strategic attack. Whoever was leading the Valorian forces knew exactly how to break humanity's defenses. They knew where the weaknesses were. They understood human military tactics. 3 months into the invasion, humanity's situation was desperate. James's fleet had won some small battles, but they had lost far more than they had won. His ships were damaged and running low on supplies. His soldiers were tired and scared. The Valorians kept advancing, colony after colony falling under their control. The last major battle began above Earth itself. James stood in the command center, watching the screens as the Valorian fleet approached his planet. This was it. The final stand. If his fleet lost this battle, humanity would lose everything. "All ships, prepare for combat," James said into the communication system. "This is our home. This is where we fight. This is where we win or die trying." His 300 ships moved into formation. The Valorian fleet appeared on the screens, massive and overwhelming. For a moment there was silence. Then the battle began. Ships exploded. Laser fire filled the void of space. Thousands of soldiers fought and died. James watched the battle unfold, making decisions that cost lives. Every choice was impossible. Every decision meant someone would die. The Valerian fleet was winning. James could see it clearly. His ships were falling faster than they could take down enemy vessels. In another hour, maybe two, the Valerian ships would begin their descent to Earth's surface. Then it would be over. James was preparing a final message to Earth's government, a message saying that he had failed, when something strange happened. All the Valerian weapons went silent. Not just quiet. Silent. Every weapon, every engine, everything stopped. The Valerian ships hung in space like dead things, completely motionless. What is happening? Sarah asked, confusion in her voice. Why did they stop firing? James had no answer. He waited, watching the screens carefully, expecting some kind of trick. But nothing happened. The Valerian ships remained still. Then a transmission came through. It was audio only, no video signal. A voice spoke in perfect English, a voice that was calm and controlled and somehow familiar. This is Counselor Arya of the Valerian Empire. I am ordering all Valerian attack forces to stand down immediately. All weapons are to be powered down. No human vessel is to be attacked. This is a direct command from the High Council. Disobey this order and you will face trial for treason against the Empire. James felt his entire body go cold. Arya. It could not be. After 10 years, he had almost convinced himself that she was just a memory, something that happened but did not really matter in the larger scheme of things. But it was her. Her voice was older, more authoritative, but it was definitely her. For several long minutes nothing happened. James wondered if the Valerian commanders would obey this mysterious counselor or if they would continue the attack. Then, one by one, the Valerian ships powered down their weapon systems. The fleet that had seemed unstoppable just moments before became passive and still. Hold your fire, James ordered his own fleet. Do not attack. Repeat, do not attack. He could not explain what was happening. He could not understand why a Valerian counselor had just saved his entire species. But he knew one thing for certain. Somehow, impossibly, Arya was alive and powerful. And she had remembered him. After the battle ended, there was confusion everywhere. James's fleet did not know what to do. The Valerian ships were still in orbit around Earth, but they were not attacking. Some of James's officers wanted to launch a counterattack while the enemy was vulnerable. Others wanted to negotiate. James ordered everyone to hold their positions and wait. 3 days later, a message came through official channels. James was invited to a neutral space station for a meeting with Counselor Arya. James knew this could be a trap, but he also knew he had to go. If there was any chance to understand what was happening and to protect his people, he had to take it. He took only a small escort of trusted officers. They traveled through space in a small diplomatic vessel, leaving the safety of Earth's defenses behind. James felt nervous in a way he had not felt since he was a young soldier. His heart was beating fast and his hands felt cold. The neutral station was massive, a large circular structure floating in empty space. It belonged to neither humans nor Valorians, but to a trade federation that tried to remain neutral in all galactic conflicts. James and his officers docked carefully and were escorted through the station's corridors by robotic guides. The meeting room was large and elegant. Windows on one side looked out at the stars. Standing near one of the windows was a figure in elegant robes. She turned when James entered, and he knew immediately that it was Arya, though she had changed dramatically in 10 years. She was taller now, more confident. Her movements were graceful and controlled. She wore robes that marked her as someone of great importance and power. But her eyes were the same. Those large, round eyes that had been filled with tears and fear on a frozen planet now looked at James with recognition and something that might have been affection. "James," she said, and his name sounded beautiful when she said it. "I was not certain you would come." "I had to," James replied. "You stopped the invasion. You saved my people. I needed to understand why." Arya gestured to a chair. They both sat down. For a moment she said nothing. She simply looked at James as if she was trying to memorize his face. "Do you remember the night we spent together on Kepler 442b? Arya asked finally. "I have never forgotten it," James said honestly. "Neither have I," Arya said. "Every single day for 10 years I remembered that night. I remembered how you treated me. You did not see me as an alien or as a princess or as a servant. You saw me as a person. You gave me your last meal. You risked your own survival to help me." James listened carefully. He was starting to understand something, but he was not sure what. Arya stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars as she spoke. "When I returned to my people, everything was different. I was a princess, but I was still not important in my empire's eyes. My family taught me that Valorians were superior to all other beings. That conquest was the only way to survive. That kindness was weakness. That individual people did not matter. Only the Empire mattered. She turned back to face James. But I could not stop thinking about you. About how you treated me. About how different the galaxy could be if more beings thought like you. So I started to study. I started to learn. I rose through the ranks of my empire not by being a better warrior, but by being a better strategist. A better thinker. The invasion, James said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Yes, Arya confirmed. The invasion was ordered by the old guard of my empire. The hardliners who still believed in conquest and domination. They did not know that I had risen so high within the government. They did not expect me to have the power to stop them. She walked closer to James. I have spent 10 years changing my people from the inside. I have taught them about mercy. About cooperation. About the value of individual beings. I have made enemies. I have faced resistance at every step. But I did it all because of you. Because of one human who shared his last meal with a crying alien girl. James felt tears forming in his eyes. You gave up so much, he said quietly. I gave up my empire's dominance, Arya corrected. But I gained something far more valuable. I gained hope that the galaxy could be different. I gained the knowledge that beings from different worlds could care about each other. I gained the certainty that kindness was not weakness but the greatest strength of all. She paused and her voice became more serious. But I am risking everything now. By stopping the invasion, by defying the hardliners in my government, I have made enemies among my own people. There are those who see me as a traitor. They want me removed from power. They want the invasion to continue. What will happen? James asked. Civil war, Arya said simply. My people will fight among themselves. Those who believe in my vision of unity and cooperation against those who believe in the old ways of conquest. It will be a terrible conflict. But it is necessary. My empire cannot continue on the path it was taking. She reached out and took James's hand. Her skin was warm and soft. I am asking for your help, James. I am asking for humanity's help. Together we can show my people that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Together we can build something new. A galaxy where different species do not fight for dominance but work together for survival and growth. James thought about the colony on Kepler 442b. He thought about sharing his last meal with Arya. He thought about how that one simple act of kindness had rippled across 10 years and across the vast distances of space. I will help you, he said. My people will help you. Because you were right. Kindness is the strongest force in the galaxy. Arya smiled, and it was the same smile she had given him on that frozen night 10 years ago, though now it was filled with hope instead of fear. The announcement shocked the entire Valerian Empire. Counselor Arya stood before the High Council and declared that the invasion of human space was unjust and must stop immediately. She proposed a treaty based on mutual respect, cooperation, and the recognition of individual worth rather than imperial dominance. She spoke for hours, explaining her vision of a united galaxy where different species worked together instead of destroying each other. The reaction was immediate and violent. The hardliners in the government refused to accept her proposal. They called her a traitor. They said she had been corrupted by human weakness. They demanded that the invasion continue and that Arya be removed from power by any means necessary. Within days, the Valerian Empire fractured. Some government officials and military commanders supported Arya's vision. They saw the logic in her arguments and the possibility of a better future. Others remained loyal to the old ways of conquest and domination. They began to gather their forces. Civil war erupted in Valerian space. James watched from Earth as the reports came in. The Valerian Empire, which had seemed so unified and powerful, was now tearing itself apart from within. Ships fought against ships. Worlds were divided, with some populations supporting Arya and others supporting the hardliners. It was chaos and destruction on a scale that was hard to comprehend. But Arya did not fight alone. James coordinated with her from Earth, sending human military advisors and support to help her forces. It was a strange alliance, humans and Valorians fighting side by side against the old guard of the Valerian military. But it worked. James's strategic knowledge, combined with Arya's understanding of Valerian culture and military tactics, proved effective. The war lasted 3 long years. There were terrible battles and heavy losses on both sides. Many soldiers died. Many worlds suffered. But slowly, steadily, Arya's forces gained ground. The hardliners lost support as more and more Valorians realized that change was inevitable and necessary. The turning point came when a group of younger Valerian military officers rebelled against the hardline commanders. They had grown up hearing about Arya's vision. They had never known the old days of pure conquest. They believed that cooperation with other species was not weakness but strength. They switched sides, bringing their ships and their soldiers with them. The hardliners were defeated within months of that rebellion. Their leader, Supreme Commander Vexus, was captured and brought to trial for crimes against his own people and against humanity. Arya stood in the courtroom when Vexus was sentenced. He looked at her with hatred in his eyes and spoke words of defiance. But it did not matter anymore. His time had passed. The old ways were dying. When the war ended, there was exhaustion but also hope. The Valerian Empire began the long process of transformation. Arya worked tirelessly to reform the government, to eliminate the rigid class system that had kept beings like her powerless, and to establish a new way of thinking among her people. Meanwhile, Earth and humanity also changed. The invasion had been terrifying, but it had also united humanity in ways that nothing else could have. All the nations of Earth came together to work toward peace and cooperation with the Valorians. Scientists began to share knowledge. Artists began to exchange ideas. Trade routes were established. 10 years after the stopped invasion, a ceremony was held. It took place on a neutral station, in a great hall that had been constructed specifically for the occasion. Leaders from both human and Valerian societies gathered. James and Arya stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by hundreds of delegates and officials. The treaty was being formally signed. It was a document that would establish peace between the two species and create the framework for cooperation and mutual growth. But more than that, it was a symbol. A symbol of what could happen when one being showed kindness to another, when compassion was allowed to grow, when individual worth was recognized and valued. One by one, the delegates approached. They came to acknowledge the new order, to accept the treaty, and to express their support for the alliance between humans and Valorians. Some placed their hands on the document as it was signed. Others made formal gestures of respect according to their own cultures. Then came the moment that would be remembered throughout history. The leaders of the major powers approached James and Arya. They knelt. Not in submission or defeat, but in recognition. In respect. In acknowledgement that these two beings, one human and one Valerian, had accomplished something extraordinary. They had stopped a war before it could consume entire civilizations. They had built a bridge between worlds. James looked at Arya and she looked back at him. 10 years earlier, she had been a frightened girl lost on a frozen planet. He had been a man with nothing left to lose. They had shared a meal. They had shared kindness. And that simple act had changed everything. The delegates rose. The hall filled with sounds of celebration. Different species who had been enemies just months before were now standing together, shaking hands, embracing, speaking about a future that could be different from anything the galaxy had ever known. That night, James and Arya stood together on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The same stars they had looked at on that frozen night on Kepler 442b, though now they were looking at them as partners rather than as strangers. "Do you remember what I told you?" Arya asked. "When we first met? You told me you had never been listened to before," James said. "You told me no one had ever cared about what you thought." "Yes," Arya said softly. "But you listened. You cared. And that changed everything. For me. For my people. For your people. For the entire galaxy." James took her hand. "We did this together," he said. "Kindness alone would not have been enough. It took courage. It took intelligence. It took the willingness to imagine something better and then to fight for it." "Then let us keep fighting," Arya said. "Not with weapons but with ideas. With cooperation. With compassion. Let us build a galaxy where every being, no matter their origin or status, is valued and respected." James nodded. The future stretched out before them, uncertain but full of possibility. A human and an alien girl standing together had transformed the course of history. And their work was only just beginning.